Hey, it's Richard Strauss from the EODC chapter, and guess what you're watching? That's right, you're watching EOTV, and you are lucky to be doing so.
Hi, welcome to EOTV. I'm Randall Mauricio.
And I'm Terry Apostle. Now, before we get started today, we want to tell you about a few changes to your EOTV webcast.
Now, we're still going to bring you the same great stories, and we're still going to bring you the same great tips, but now you'll get them every other week.
That's right. EOTV is going bi-weekly, but not to worry, because the content that you love isn't going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. Today, though, we're talking about what everybody else is talking about. We've all seen the devastating images of the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico.
Several lives and livelihoods have been lost, and endangered wildlife threatened.
Yeah, and one of the images that stands out the most is that of BP's CEO, Tony Hayward, being attacked by the press for his mishandling of the disaster.
And Bill, the head of your company today was trying to, on ABC News, was fending off some of the criticism that BP has gotten for not having enough fail-safe operations on this. He was saying that the company has a good record, but he says this is just a failure of a safety device.
Well, that's exactly right. What the device that is supposed to protect from an incident of this kind is called a blowout preventer. That blowout preventer is part of the rig that was owned by Transocean in this case, and they were drilling the well. It was that piece of equipment that failed. Unfortunately, we don't know why it failed to stop the flow. Our focus now is to stop the flow and minimize the impact, and then eventually we'll recover that blowout preventer, and everyone will be able to get a look at it and find out exactly what went wrong.
So the question is, what do you do to manage a public relations disaster? How would you and your company respond in order to maintain a positive public image?
EO member Nick Leighton owns NetResults. That's an international PR firm, and he's a professor specializing in crisis management. He's well versed on how to address the media in situations like the one BP's facing.
Today, he shares a few timely tips on how to turn negative situations into good press.
I run a company called NetResults, specializing in public relations and crisis communication. They've been a co-author on the book of Crisis Communications. Also an associate professor at 2 universities in Southern California, and I lecture graduate students in the areas of international marketing and crisis communication. I think there are really 5 keys to understanding a crisis communication situation. First of all, crisis happens to big companies and to small companies. So don't think it has to be a calamity. It's not as if a plane has to crash or someone has to lose their life. Secondly, the crisis doesn't always happen to you directly for your own doing. Sometimes you get to a crisis situation because there are activities outside of your business due to a third party or just due to plain bad luck. So when you find yourself in a crisis situation, just like BP or anyone else, speed is the most vital criteria that you need to look at. If you can't react quickly, then you create something called a media vacuum that someone else will fill. And if someone else fills the news space, then you're not in control of the situation. The 4th area is that you've really got to be prepared, knowing what your message is going to be, who's going to say the message, and how it's going to be delivered. These are the most important things. So you need a proactive crisis communication plan. It's not difficult to do one. You can either do that yourself by reading a book or call up your local PR agency, and it will cost little more than a couple of days' worth of consultancy. The last thing is practice. Practice makes perfect. So if you practice lots and if you're experienced with the media, then it'll be a lot easier when a crisis hits. So get media trained, buy a book on the subject, or again, call your local PR agency. Cost will be minimal. To get prepared for a crisis, suddenly you find yourself in one. What do you need to know? Understand how the media works in a crisis situation, and what the journalist is looking for. So for example, if it's your local newspaper that's going to call you up for a story, they need to know the angle, how this crisis will affect the local economy. If it's a financial newspaper that's going to call up, they want to know what the financial implications are. So think about what the media is. Secondly, deal with negative and aggressive reporters very efficiently and effectively. Make sure you respond to them very quickly, be very polite, be very businesslike. Third, turn negative questions into positive answers. This is what we call bridging. There's a number of techniques that we can use to bridge a negative question into a positive statement. Fourthly, proactively deliver corporate messaging. Even though there's a crisis going on, you want to really talk about your whole corporate messaging. But next on the list, be very careful about your confidential information. Keep that to yourself. Do not speak to any media about anything that's confidential. They may use it, and that may be broken. And then really the most important thing is to practice, re-practice, anticipate, and practice some more. BP are finding themselves in a very difficult situation. The first problem that they really occurred was they didn't know where the fault was lying. So not only was it their own company, but there were 2 or 3 very key partners they were working with. And they weren't upfront with the media. They didn't talk about taking responsibility, and that's the first problem. You don't want the media to be against you. You want the media to be working with you. And had they taken responsibility right at the beginning, from a corporate communications point of view, maybe not from a legal point of view, they probably could have had the media on their side. We work with clients all the time that find themselves in a crisis, cannot believe while they're in that crisis communication they'll ever get out to the other side. But often that media builds a relationship with them. The media are normal people who want to find positive stories in the greater extent of times. So then once they build a relationship with people, they then want to see the recovery, they want to see the good that's come from a situation. And then often you're in a more positive situation in the media as a whole.
Thanks for that, Nick, and I'm sure everyone will be watching closely to see how BP handles this situation going forward.
Yeah, we've been talking about some serious things on today's show, but we figured we'd leave you on a high note, and I think my motivational thought will help.
Let's hear
me
it.
out. In order to succeed, you must know what you're doing, like what you're doing, and believe in what you're doing.
Very nice, Randall. Wise words.
As usual.
And I'm sure there are a few EOers that already take that thought to heart.
Yeah, now remember, EOTV will be back 2 weeks from now with more great, useful information for you. And of course, we'll be back too.
Yeah, see you
Some
then.
of us. See ya.